So welcome to our podcast on the 5 keys for managers to unlock the power of employee engagement. My name is Charles Rogel. I'm the Vice President of Products and Marketing for DecisionWise, and I'll be moderating our presentation today. My guest is Dr. David Mason.
Hi.
David is a consultant here at DecisionWise and a master trainer. He holds a doctorate degree in cognitive psychology from Columbia University, and he leads the development and delivery of our Engagement Magic training program. David, that's a very brief introduction. Anything else that you would like to add to elaborate on?
No, honestly, there's not that much interesting about me. So you said all of it. Let me think if I can come up with something. I was teaching at University College London before I came to DecisionWise. That was fun. I used to teach, I guess the one that never comes up in conversations like this, and I'm going to use this chance to talk about it. I used to teach the psychology of sex and gender. No one ever wants to tap into that.
But was your class always full? Was that a very popular class?
It was standing room only, actually.
I can imagine.
But yeah, no one ever asked for that when I'm doing stuff like that. So
well, maybe we'll do another podcast on that topic.
I'd love that.
So today we're going to be talking about the 5 magic keys and things that managers can do to boost the engagement of their employees. We'll get into these magic keys. Magic is an acronym and stands for meaning, autonomy, growth, impact, and connection. But the real essence of our conversation is going to be about things that managers can do, practical things that they can do to boost engagement on their teams. So we'll have some theory involved here, but we really want to talk practical items. So first,
that was a warning for me, for anyone listening. Yeah. Like, they know me well enough. They're like, they're trying to get me to stop before I start.
Stay away from the theory and let's get to the practical stuff. So first, let's talk about our definition of employee engagement. What does it mean? Most managers, I think, have an awareness, but I don't think they could really articulate a good definition if you were to ask them.
No, and that's a great point. In fact, that's kind of everyone. Engagement is one of those things that sounds really intuitive, like, oh yeah, I know what that is. But as soon as you say, well, define it, everyone goes, well, when you're engaged, I guess.
You're happy and work hard.
Well, that's a good point. Like when you're happy, it's not happiness. If it was happiness, we'd be saying, how do you get your employees happy? But it's not. There's so much more to it than that. It has to do with a level of passion and commitment and sort of holistic involvement. And I'm already getting too far into the theory again.
I'm snoring over here.
The idea is just how do you get so that you're super involved in your work, so that you're passionate and you stop thinking about what the clock is saying and you just want to get something done because you're so excited about it.
Yeah.
When the rest of the world kind of like tunes out and something like that. Now that's the highest level of engagement, obviously, and that's not something where anyone can be at all times. But the idea is just getting people really committed to their work, passionate about their work more often than not. That's engagement.
Well, I think as a manager, too, they recognize which of their employees are fully engaged in their work. They can kind of see it and maybe identify it, but not really articulate what's making that happen or how absorbed they're getting in their work.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people really tend to fall back on is, it's just an emotion. There's nothing I can do about it. But actually, emotions are like almost anything else in this world, that they're talents and skills, and you can be deliberate about them, and you can learn how to be better at them. And that's absolutely where we're going with all this engagement, is that we've figured out the formula, essentially. This is how you get more engaged, and this is how you get other people more engaged.
So let's jump into that. Let's talk about the 5 magic keys I mentioned before: meaning, autonomy, growth, impact, and connection. These keys basically come from our research that we've done analyzing employee engagement surveys over the years and really trying to identify the drivers that cause people to be engaged. One difference is we're not talking about satisfaction in this case. Satisfaction is an entirely different concept. It's the foundation for engagement, but it's not what causes people to be engaged.
Yeah. No, good point. And that's one of the first main confusions, actually, is where people fall into is they try and satisfy, or they try and what's the word? They try and fix satisfaction, and they think they're fixing engagement, but it's not. And so satisfaction is this idea of essentially balancing an equation. They say, okay, well, what's the contract for my work? Well, I'm going to give you this, and you're going to pay me this. And so that's satisfying the terms of the contract. And so what people do is they say, okay, well, if I want you to work harder, I'm going to give you more stuff. I'm going to pay you more, or I'm going to give you a foosball table, or I'm going to give you more breaks, or I'm going to give you a snack cupboard or something like that. Yeah. And the idea being I'm giving you more, I've unbalanced the equation, and so now you'll have to work harder to rebalance it. But the problem is satisfaction, it's not sustainable. It's people adapt to it, and so they get used to it, and they're not as pumped by pay raises or things like that anymore. Because I mean, think about pay raises, right? You get your pay raise, and the next thing you're thinking about is when's my next pay raise.
Exactly. You're excited for a day or a week.
Yeah, right. And you've already spent it. So,
right.
And so you can't do that. And so that's one of the reasons it's not sustainable is there's only so many resources you can throw at someone before, and we're insatiable.
Well, and those satisfaction elements really drive retention because people will stay if they're getting paid well and having, and they're satisfied. And it also helps attract good talent because people look at the benefits and all the cool things that you might have in your organization and they'll want to work for your company. But engagement really drives performance because that's where people really get excited about their work and deliver at a high level.
Well, and honestly, I'd say that there's a fair amount of retention in it as well. Like we look at the changing nature of the job market where people are having more and more jobs. And part of what they're searching for is because they can find these satisfaction elements everywhere now. And like you said, recruiting, it's huge for recruiting. But because people are searching for more, it's not enough to just get paid enough to support your family anymore. That's how it was in the 50s and 60s, and we've grown out of that where there's so much more information available that I'm not just stuck in my town anymore working at the mill because I know there's other options available. And so what people are doing is saying, oh, well, we're one of those other options. Here's some fantastic recruiting benefits.
Yeah.
And so people can go over there. But the reason they don't stay there is because there's somewhere else that's got other ones. And so they bounce around, but they're always searching for that thing that's fulfilling. And so engagement actually has a fair amount of retention as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying satisfaction is not retention. It's a big part of the driving.
Sure.
But engagement is not just performance, but retention as well. But yeah, that wasn't even the question you asked. So performance, sorry.
Well, the point I was making is engagement is more of a driver of performance as opposed to satisfaction. It doesn't, It doesn't influence performance.
Oh, no, not at all. Engagement's like the key to that.
So let's talk about meaning then. Do you want to talk about the definition, how it's used, and what managers can do to increase meaning in one's job?
Yeah, sure. So meaning is essentially the idea that your work has purpose beyond the work itself. And so I'm not just pushing a button, I'm saving a life. You know what I mean? I'm not just filling out a document, I'm helping someone go to college. Something like that. And so the idea is you want to find something meaningful in the work that you do. Everyone has a value system that's sort of inherent to themselves. They value X, Y, or Z. And the more that you can connect someone's work and the tasks they do in their employment to that value, the more meaning they're going to find in their work. Now, there's two types of meaning. Sometimes it's really obvious. So there's intrinsic and extrinsic meaning. And this is something that a lot of people fall or trip over, because it's really easy to find meaning when your job is a doctor or a policeman or a teacher or a parent. You know what I mean? That's very obvious and it usually lines up really well with people's value systems. Hey, do you like helping people? Well, here's a job where you help people. But other jobs don't have it as obvious. And so that's what we call, I think I said intrinsic and extrinsic. It's inherent and associated meaning. Inherent being what we just described. Associated meaning being where the job itself isn't necessarily meaningful. I'm trying to think of a job.
Line worker working fast food or something like that.
Yeah, it's really easy to be like, hey, listen, I'm not saving lives here. I'm giving you a Big Mac. But you can find meaning in that, such as I know a lot of people that find meaning in brightening a customer's day when they're doing that. Here's your, cheap fries. Here's your cheap fries, but here is a smile, and look, I made your day. Or I am the first person in my family to go to college and I'm working my way through it. Or I'm providing for my son to be the first person to go through college.
Yeah.
And there's ways to create that meaning that aligns again.
So as we talk about this, how does a manager help instill meaning in someone that they manage?
Short answer, they don't. Long answer. So the details here are really important because I can't just grab you and say, hey, start valuing this, just grab them and say, you now like this.
Yeah.
Because you can't. It's that inherent value system, what someone values. The key to what a manager can do, though, and this goes back to who owns engagement, right?
Right.
Like, I can be the best and most amazing leader / manager in the world. It doesn't mean my employees are going to automatically be engaged.
Yeah.
Because they have to make that choice. And so a manager, if you want to increase meaning in someone, you can't increase the meaning. You can increase their connection to the meaning they already have.
Well, a lot of it's about awareness, right? So it's
exactly.
Like, I think a lot of times, and even before we talked about this magic model, I never really thought about meaning in my job.
Right.
Like I thought, I like my job and I think we do good work and I kind of I'm into it. But I never thought, okay, do I really find inherent meaning in the work that I'm doing? And does it does it contribute to my value system and all that kind of stuff? So I think as I started thinking about that, I could connect the dots to about 5 different things that I'm doing that really make me aware of the amount of meaning that I'm getting out of my job.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that meaning is simply I work for a company that values work-life balance, and so I'm able to spend more time at home with my kids or something, you know. And so the key to what a manager can do and is to create that awareness, because a lot of what you're talking about is because our meaning is subconscious. And what the manager can do is the manager, she can make it conscious.
Sure.
And say, hey, you know, when you do this, look at the value you're demonstrating. And then someone go, oh yeah, this is really cool.
Well, I think we'll get to this as well as we talk about impact, but it's really understanding as well how you're making a contribution, how you're impacting the overall maybe mission of the organization, how your small contribution really makes a difference in people's lives down the chain.
Yeah. If that's meaningful to you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just finding whatever that value might be, whether it could be that you don't even care about other people at all, but you care about being allowed to be creative or innovative.
Yeah.
And look, hey, we will give you that chance to do that. So
let's talk about autonomy for a minute. You want to explain the definition and then how it really motivates people to work harder?
Sure. So autonomy is this idea that as people, we sort of bristle at the idea of being told what to do. And we react to that, and we always try and stretch and create that elbow room and stuff like that. And that's no difference in the workplace. People want to feel competent. They want to feel self-empowered. They want to be able to be their best self. And that's what autonomy is the idea of giving someone enough freedom to be their best self. Now, it's not complete freedom because then they wouldn't be their best self. I couldn't put you in a situation that you're unequipped to handle and say, oh, yeah, but you got full autonomy. Well, you'll fail. I've put you in a position to fail.
Yeah.
And that's bad. No one's going to like that. At the same time, I can't put you in a position that you're well equipped to handle and be like, now, Charles, you know, like the shirt you're wearing, like you're going to want to take your buttons in your left hand and button the bottom first and then go to the next button. Like, if I did that every day, you'd be furious. You'd be like, oh my gosh, leave me alone. Don't get me wrong, I've had bosses like that are
the micromanager types,
like beyond control freak kind of stuff, right? And so you want to find that sweet spot in the middle of allowing someone enough freedom that they don't feel stifled, but you're not putting them in that position to fail.
Yeah, because sometimes as a manager, you want to give people more autonomy, and they don't want it. They're afraid. They don't want to make decisions. They don't want to take risks.
They don't want the accountability.
Right. But others do, and when you can empower your employees, that's what autonomy really does. It empowers your employees to make changes and really be invested in their work. Then they tend to perform better, and they're more excited about what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one, if we want to go back to the theme of managers and how you help things, this is one that you probably have the most control over as a manager, is that autonomy. And there's a couple different ways you can have autonomy. It doesn't necessarily just mean how you get your job done. It can mean social autonomy, who you work with, temporal autonomy, when you work. Like, do you get to come in a little bit later or leave? Like, do you have to be there during business hours, or can you mess with that? Yeah. Spatial autonomy, where you work, what your workspace looks like. There's lots of different ways that people can feel better. Just like how you dress, you know what I mean? Like, we talk about how Casual Friday is such a big deal in places.
Yeah.
Because like, oh my gosh, I got to wear jeans. Like, oh wow, what a day. And so you can see how big of a deal just that freedom of expression can be. And so managers, you can find things that fit within the organization that you can allow people to do, and it's going to make them feel better, more empowered, more autonomous.
Well, and it helps with innovation as well. All of a sudden they feel like they can come up with their own ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to give them that safety net so that they feel okay doing that.
So the related key to autonomy is growth, which is the next item. Growth meaning learning, being challenged, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So if autonomy is the freedom to be your best self, growth is being your best self. It's that actual culmination of that. And so again, this is a very natural thing. People want to grow. They want to be better. It's their natural state of affairs. They can't help but try and get better.
So a lot of times we see some of the poorest scoring questions on employee surveys are employees recognizing or feeling like there's opportunities for growth and development in the organization.
Yeah.
And we always go back and say, okay, what are your managers doing to encourage growth and development? So how does a manager promote growth with their employees?
I think the first thing they have to do is recognize that there is a limited resource of advancement opportunities and promotions. And so they first need to rebrand everything and be like, hey, listen, growth and development does not mean you went from assistant to the manager or what's the one from The Office? I'm trying to quote The Office and I can't remember it at all.
Assistant manager or assistant to the manager.
Is that what it is? Okay, yeah, that one. That's what I was trying to reference.
Assistant regional manager or assistant to the regional manager.
Yes, okay. So yeah, it's not that we can go from assistant to the assistant regional manager.
So it's not promotion.
Exactly. And that's just never going to be the case. And that's what a lot of people struggle with. And so you have to rebrand it and be like, listen, no, but you can still get better. And you can look at that as just adding resume bullet points and saying, I have now this skill and I'm certified here. That's one way. You can grow just as a person. You can grow in your abilities within. There's lots of different ways to look at that growth outside of advancement opportunities.
Well, and another thing, I was just thinking, our CEO was meeting with a client last week, and they're doing a new thing where they've constantly seen these low scores for growth and development opportunities. But now they're putting the ownership back in the employee's hands and saying, okay, what are you doing? What is your professional development plan? You create it. Your manager's going to help you with it and hold you accountable to achieve those goals. But it's really, as a manager, trying to put that ownership back on the employee instead of the employee waiting for their manager to sign them up for some class.
Yeah, totally. And that goes back to what we were saying at the beginning about who owns engagement, is that a lot of times people think about it as just this thing that happens, that it's environmental engagement. And they don't realize that it's something they can actually do. And so that's a really savvy move of them to be like, you have to make that choice. Because if we just give you a growth opportunity, who's to say that you care about it?
Right.
Like, I don't want to have faster typing speed. That's not a growth opportunity for me. Whereas other people might find that phenomenal. And so they have to be open about it. And as a manager, you have to be familiar enough with your employees that you know what's going to be meaningful to them. And so you can help guide them and be like, well, that's not an option. But what about this? That's similar, and that's something within my control to help bring about.
So let's move on to impact. Impact being closely related to meaning that we talked about before.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about the definition, what it means?
So meaning is what you value, and impact is the tangible results that you've made on those things that you value. So if you value helping people, this would be, how many people did you help? I actually got to see someone I helped. I saw the smile on their face, or I see the metric that shows this many people were saved because I invented seatbelts or something. You know what I mean? And so that's impact. And you can see why it's related to meaning, because we all have impact just by existing, but not all of it's meaningful. Yeah. And so it has to be something that you value.
It's not simply getting things done, checking off a checklist.
Yeah. Some people love that. Other people hate that. I wasted my time doing checklists, whereas other people see that as, no, look at the progress I made.
Well, an impact's more about making a contribution to the organization as a whole. So you can get a lot of things done during the day, but did it really make a difference to the company? Did you kind of move the mission forward?
Yeah, and did the company make a difference in the world?
So as a manager, how do you help employees feel like they're making an impact?
So there's a couple of ways, and the very first one is just feedback, essentially. Letting someone know, because a lot of times you're a step removed from what's actually happening. And so someone will do all this work and then you can't, you don't know what happens after that. You kind of just let that baby go. And then you're just like, oh, well, hey, did anything happen? Oh yeah, they loved it. Well, freaking tell me, right. And so that's one of the biggest things you can do.
So recognition, you're saying, or is it a little bit different than that? Feedback, recognition.
No, it's an interesting question. So it's definitely a part of recognition. But it's also more not just, hey, you did a good job, but rather saying, hey, you did a good job. This is what happened.
So connect the dots, kind of line of sight to what really matters.
Yeah. So help the results be more proximal to the effort.
Yeah.
And so if I do something and someone shows me, hey, look what happened, that's going to move me. That's going to move my loyalty up. That's going to move my motivation up. And I'm going to be much more inspired to do more work when I see, hey, look at the difference it made. Look at these numbers. So that's a huge one. So just measuring what people are doing and then helping them be more proximal to it.
Now, the last component here, or last key, is connection.
Okay.
Let's talk about that for a minute. What's the definition of connection?
So I'm trying to think of the most tangible way to put that, because again, this is super philosophical, but
right.
the idea of connection is just how intimately you feel aligned with the company, with its mission, with its values, with the people you work with, and with the work itself.
Okay.
So how close are you to those things, and how much do you care? You know what I mean? Like, I could be really connected to you, but I don't like you. And so I don't go home and be like, wow, what a great connection. I hate him, but
right.
And so it's a lot of that alignment that we continually talk about. It's like harmony. When you think about singing, there's discordant and then there's harmonious. And you want that harmony because that's where the magic happens.
Well,
it's the magic killer.
Yeah, way to tie that in. Yeah, and I look at it as that raving fan who dresses up for game day, paints their face, wears the jersey. Yeah, never miss a game.
Anyone in Buffalo, really.
Right, exactly. So, connection then, as a manager, how do you cultivate connection for your employees? That seems like a tough one. I mean, you don't want to necessarily be best friends with all the employees that you manage, but how do you get them to feel more connected to the organization, their work, the people that they work with?
And that's one of the hardest ones to actually accomplish, because it's so ethereal of a concept.
A little bit nebulous, huh?
So the idea here is, again, take connection and take it as literally as possible, because just proximity is going to do that. So it's the alignment of values, and it's the proximity to those values. So, for example, I feel connected to you because you and I work a lot together.
Yeah.
To the point that our offices are now like however many feet away from each other, right?
2 apart.
And that's made me feel closer, just that proximity. Whereas when we were on different floors, it was like, oh yeah, Charles up there on that floor way up there. And so,
right.
And so that makes a difference, is just doing that. So when you can get people of similar values aligned and more in contact, I mean, that's one of the great predictors of any sort of relationship, is just geographical proximity. And so if you can take that concept and say, okay, well, how do I get quote unquote geographical proximity to a value? Like, oh, this is the mission that we do. We care about donating back to the community. Well, get your employee to be a part of that, rather than just throw some money at it and not tell anyone. Hang a sign on the wall. Hey, we helped this charity, or help them go out and actually do something about it.
So providing opportunities where your employees can work together, not necessarily just work, but do things together, get to know each other better, have more of a connection. And also connecting to the company. I mean, you mentioned like activities that the company is doing, getting employees involved so they kind of wear the brand outside the office kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the foxhole mentality. When people go through something together, and it doesn't have to necessarily be bad.
Yeah.
When people go through something together and accomplish something together, and they're all aligned in those values, then they will invariably, they can't help but be more connected.
So anything else? So we've gone through the 5 kind of magic keys, and I know we talk a lot about what managers can do to kind of boost their own engagement and those that they work with. Mm-hmm. Anything else to kind of wrap this all up? How does a manager kind of take all of these keys and this information we provided and really maybe apply it to their employees? Any simple, practical recommendations you would give?
Yeah, so I'd say 2 things really. And it starts with connection. The idea being you need to be more connected to the people that you work with, because otherwise you won't know what's going to help them. And so really work on that connection, and then get to know them well enough that you understand what motivates them, and then see what you can do to help provide more of that in their life. And so does that answer your question?
That's it. I mean, that's a simple solution.
Yeah, so that's easily the number one thing you have to do is foster that.
And you see that quite often where managers aren't meeting enough with their employees. We always say, hey, you ought to meet with them once a week, have a one-on-one sit down. And, it's just good performance management. If you're just doing a yearly performance review with your employees,
oh, good heavens,
that's not enough.
No, that's the worst.
So you need to really get to know them and sit down with them and understand, like you said, how they tick and what motivates them.
And not just forced connection. Hey, what'd you do this weekend? I don't actually care. You know what I mean? Like, find something that you actually care about, and then make that your moment of connection, your moment of zen, touch point, and from there, it'll build.
Excellent. Well, David, thank you. Again, we'll probably have you on another one of these podcasts to talk more about engagement and other research that you're working on.
Yeah, I hope so.
And we hope everyone will join us on our future podcasts. Thanks, everybody.